And we're live. Welcome everybody to another NPM Open RFC call. Today's date is Wednesday, March the 3rd, 2021. We'll be following along the agenda that was posted in the NPM RFC's repo. It was issue 335. So pretty packed agenda today. I've copied and pasted the HackMD notes doc if you'd like to add yourself as an attendee. Just pasted it there in chat again as well. Quick housekeeping. Again, these calls are meant to ideally push forward and hopefully improve the state of the NPM client and our open source projects, and also are an opportunity for us to communicate and talk about improvements that the community would like to see happen. And we ask that everybody be mindful and thoughtful as others are speaking. Please raise your hand if somebody else is speaking and I'll call on you. There's a code of conduct that we expect everybody to abide by, which is linked in the issue that we posted for this agenda. And feel free to read it if you haven't already. Any announcements that folks have? If not, no announcements for this week. We can dive right into the first item. It doesn't look like Orta was able to join us, but the first item in the agenda is PR or RFC 332. So yarn style command script bin lookups. And I'll just copy and paste the issue itself. Based on the fact Orta's not here, did somebody else want to potentially add context here? I know, Jordan, you've jumped into this. Isaac, I know you've also communicated and given some feedback. I know I also have some thoughts, but I haven't actually put pen to paper yet. Jordan, did you want to go?
Yeah, this is Orta's one, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it looks like wasn't able to jump on, but
yeah, that's fine. I mean, so the request as I see it is essentially in yarn, you can say yarn foo, and then that will run, I forget the exact order, but it will run one of a foo script or a local foo binary. And I don't even know if it falls back to the global or not, but it's certainly at least one of those two. And so folks can type yarn ESLint whatever, and it works the same as if you typed npx ESLint whatever. Or if you have an ESLint script, it works the same as npm run ESLint, whatever. And it, like npx, it avoids the need to like have the double dash argument in order to pass arguments on to the script and so on. So the request is essentially to be able to do that with npm, to be able to type npm foo and have it either run a foo script or a local foo binary, maybe the global binary, I don't know. And that, the request itself, like the desire seems fine to me. The concerns that I have are, I mean, one of them is that it means that basically adding any new top level npm command becomes semver major. Because if I have a foo script and suddenly npm 8, a new version of npm adds an npm foo command, like let's say I had a script called build, which is a common name, and then we decide there's already npm rebuild, maybe we make an npm build, right? And at that point, that would break anyone who was relying on npm build calling their script. And the reverse is true as well. It would break anyone who expected npm build to run npm build if it started running the script instead. So it kind of like smushes together a bunch of domains in a way that seems convenient, because it is convenient for the common case, but it has a lot of magic and implicitness that leads me to believe that it's not actually convenient for edge cases or for npm itself, or for users trying to hop between projects. That was my rough reactions.
Yeah, I think we've discussed this a couple times, like in different forums as well. And I see Wes and Nelf and Roy all giving you thumbs up there, Jordan, agreeing with essentially your view of this. I personally also think it's probably better for us to be explicit here. I've flown actually, Order was able to join. How's it going? Did you want to maybe? I'm not sure if you're listening in to Jordan's synopsis of your RFC, but we wanted to give you the floor if you want to speak a little bit more about. I know you have some data around your own usage of commands as well, which was I think what led to this RFC, but would love to hear from your own voice.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, to some extent, almost everything I have to say, I have conceptually already said on that RFC. There's not really anything other than like, this is just a general workflow that I use all the time. And when I wrote a post about why I was still using Yarn, a bunch of people, even in Microsoft, started reaching out and been like, yeah, we're interested in moving to NPM, and this is something that would be great if you can at least try and push and see. Like, I get that it is definitely like a breaking change on your side, so like trying to find ways to minimize the risk is just something that I'll be thinking about for a while. I don't expect it to be rubber stamped.
Yeah, it's actually worse than just making that every command is a breaking change. It's every command absolutely has to be a breaking change, like no matter what other sort of affordances we add to it, because somebody adding a new bin to a package that you install could inadvertently break a workflow you have. And so I mean this is something that I'm sure that Yarn just deals with and says, okay, well every new command is a breaking change, like that's how it is, or they're just comfortable with those changes being breaking within a non-sever major.
Yeah, and especially as this has been since version 1 for them, like from 0, like this is just how it's always been for them. So it's not like incrementally adding this where suddenly it is definitely breaking. It's just always been that way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
See,
so
Gar, you have your hand up.
I'm not sure how they handle adding new commands, because there have been new commands added within Yarn 1. I think it's probably just YOLO.
Yeah.
Gar, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Just from a fundamental software development standpoint, this scares me, because when you mix, like I'm a CLI, I have things you can do, and I have users able to do things. I have to namespace that. Otherwise, like, what if they want to run an install script, right? What if their script's called install and they want to have npm run install, right? That's the ambiguity there, is just like big, like we got klaxons going off in my head as a developer. Like, if we don't namespace the things we provide and the things your package JSON provides, the confusion is worse than the convenience of being able to not type 4 characters. Okay, sorry. I'll lower my hand.
Wes, did you want to give some feedback? Or actually, Order, did you want to like rebuttal to that?
I mean, I've never expected that sort of behavior from Yarn. There is a very obvious, the script, the things that come with the package manager come first. And like, the fallbacks are pretty obvious what's going to happen.
Wes, did you want to chime in? And then
yeah, sure. I'll actually address that probably on Jordan's behalf, since Jordan originally pointed out the problem with that. So whether or not npm scripts comes first, if a user has a build script, which is highly common, and npm adds a build script, which would normally be a minor, that is now a breaking change for that end user, right? Because it would run npm's build over their build. So it's still a breaking change, even if, right, the npm scripts come first. Anyway, that's just to address that workflow. My question was, and I don't see this referenced in the issue, but one other possible approach would be for this to be a change in npm runs behavior, or alternatively to add another top level command that adds this new functionality. So it's not that we would be never having a namespace. We would still have a namespace. It's just that namespace would behave like Yarn's unnamespaced behavior. And that would be one way that would, explicitly Sorry, lots of corrections there, right? Explicitly delineated, yes. Right, so it would separate the behavior of npm build from npm exec build or npm run build or whatever we want to call it, and then that build would be the yarn style, which would run, or it would be npm run tsc, and you wouldn't need to have a tsc command in your package JSON. It would just find the binary that you installed.
Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, that seems to me like an amazing solution, because if I'm typing npm run ESLint and I don't have an ESLint script, like 100% of the time, what I want is npx ESLint, like just full stop. So that seems like a completely safe enhancement to npm run. I suppose there could be somebody who's relying on the fact that, like, if the script doesn't work, it isn't there, it doesn't work. But like, we could always provide an npm config argument that controls that behavior, that turns it off for the people who actually care about that. That seems really great. And then the only other ergonomic wart, I think, because I think typing npm foo versus npm run foo when you didn't have to make a script is effectively identical, right? Like, but the only remaining ergonomic wart really is the -- requirement. That if I type npm run ESLint and it just invokes the ESLint binary, and I want to pass an argument to ESLint, with npx and yarn, I just start passing arguments. With npm run, I have to, if it's a regular argument that just goes through, if it's a double dashed argument, I have to do a standalone double dash in order to tell npm to stop swallowing those and pass them along. So I don't know if there is a solution to fixing that. Like, if there is, then that combination of two improvements to npm run seems like it would provide users with all of the delight that Orta is looking for, without running into all of the implicitness and maintainability concerns that some of us are reacting to, or at least most of the delight, because it's still a couple extra characters.
Okay.
Yeah, having npm run do that, we still have the safety of the warning if you don't have it installed, right? So that's kind of our guard there.
Yes.
And to speak to your command line parsing, we are in the process of kind of re-architecting how config works and separating the concerns. And it was not outside the realm of possibility to get to the point where run scripts, excuse me, args parser is just like, yeah, I accept everything and pass it along, kind of a thing. So that's not to make a break, what you suggested there.
So I noted in the comments here as well, and I'm trying to take notes as I go along here for folks. Noted in the chat specifically that is the shorthand and the alias also like a big part of this as well, like just the like the developer experience, like that seems to be something that comes up each and every time, not just like the functionality here, but it's also just like the number of characters that I write. If we can save that for developers, like that is an improvement as well. Like, is there also like an aspect of this that it's like that's what we're looking to solve for as well, like that? So it's not just that you have this behavior, and I think Jordan summarized it well, and I'll try to take notes here after on that, is that if we can improve runs, npm run script, like to have this improved behavior, and then put it, at least in my opinion, like the only way to like make this better is also to introduce a new binary, at least that is essentially mapped to that. And again, I've been holding off on creating that RFC itself, but it essentially is one of those things that has come up time and time again that we're avoiding. And I feel like the only way to like make this better and actually improve this experience for users, it would be to do that, map that to this improved run script that essentially has this logic and behavior. And npm top level commands are npm top level commands. npx is executables, binaries, and then this new, we don't have to use npr because unless you love, soft-spoken radio, we can use whatever the name is. If there was a nice, new binary that essentially mapped to this behavior, like, would that solve this, or is it truly that we really want npm this to be this all-encompassing thing? Like for you, Orta, like, because this is your RFC, like, what would you think of that as the approach where we create a new RFC asking or promoting the idea of having a binary that maps, and then also introducing new behavior to run script. I guess that would be try to solve for this.
I think the other command, like the other command could work in part, like for people that don't use npm very regularly, I think npx is still like considered like doing external command, and I think adding a new. Wait, maybe I'll restart this. I don't think it's a blocker if it's just npm space r space tsc is maybe the right way to phrase this. I don't think the complete ownership of global namespace is probably like totally like a blocker for my conceptual like usage in this case. Like if run took into account like binaries and it was as short as just adding an extra r ahead of that, that is totally acceptable to me. And that could just be a case of changing what run does. And maybe I assume there's an alias for that that's a single letter. I don't strictly know. But yeah, an alternative where it is another command that just executes like this in the global scope instantly, that'd be a solid win.
Isaac, I see you had a couple questions, and then Gar.
Yeah, I was just clarifying that the thing we're contemplating here is npm run would also fall back to locally installed bins if there's no script by that name, which I think is a pretty reasonable thing. I always end up creating an ESLint script that just is ESLint specifically for this reason. So it'd be pretty nice to have that there. The question I raised was, I'm not sure off the top of my head, it seems like a little bit of a judgment call as to whether that change to npm run script is semver major, because we will be not breaking in a situation where we currently would be. I can see the argument either way.
Like semver major.
Okay.
It has to be, because if you fall back to a binary from open source that you didn't intend to on accident, and the current behavior is that you failed, you are now, that's an RCE, right? Like
okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm sold. It's semver major. Yeah, on like, do we add npr as another external command? I think that actually npx was a mistake. It's a mistake that we preserved because we didn't want to just like rip it out and not have it there anymore. But the right answer was to create an npm exec command. And if somebody wants to run npm exec with 3 characters instead of 5, then they add a bash shortcut. And like, that's really easy to do.
So, okay, I have opinions on that, but I don't know who was first, but Wes and Michael, or Gar, sorry, your hands are up. Wes, did you want to go first?
Gar was definitely first.
Okay, Gar, feel free. You're muted, sorry.
Yep, this is semver major, and I think it's an opt-in, right? Like your flag for npm. We can get this in 7 if we accept it as something you opt into.
That makes sense.
It's more typing. I can fix that with an alias, just like my copy command as a -i that I always add, right? I can just alias npm run if I need that. I've forgotten the other thing was. Sorry.
Wes, did you want to?
Yeah, I originally raised my hand just to make sure that I said that it was semver. But as I was thinking about that, you could have the behavior behind a flag to opt in. I think that's Darcy what you were saying there, with your flag that you posted in the chat. And my question was going to be, is this going to be a change to the npm run scripts package? Because that would definitely also be a breaking change there. I'm actually relying in a couple of cases where I try catch that. And do my own behavior around it. So if you change the behavior in that package, it'll be a change to your users for that as well.
It would definitely be a breaking change in npm cli/run script if we wanted to do it there. We could still make the breaking change in that package and then pull it into npm 7 and just disable it or whatever, pass the flag through somehow. A lot of ways to skin that cat. I'm not worried about that.
So Gar, you had your
I
hand up
remember
and then
my
I.
other point.
Okay, go ahead.
This is a good space to stop. And so we've all agreed that namespacing user scripts and npm's implementation was a good idea. Is it also a good idea to namespace local scripts and I'm going to go out and execute something for the same reasons, right? I am explicitly saying I'm running something I know is a package.json as a script versus I'm running something I know is a package in the npm registry that is a exec, right?
It seems like there should be an npm config flag for npm run that says scripts only or packages only or something to that effect, right? So that I can basically opt out of the new behavior if I know for sure it's only a script. And
well, I'm coming from a place of the same kind of confusion, right? So
Mhm.
like we have three layers here, right? Us as npm providing commands we know we want to run. A package is now providing commands it can run.
Mhm.
If you're in that repo running npm run. And then we have this third layer of see, we've got three things, and we've agreed we need to separate the first two. But we're still conflating the second two.
So you're saying like I would have to, if I wanted to run my local ESLint, I would have to like populate an array in package.json listing the binaries I wanted to run with npm run?
Well, no, we're confusing the two here. What npm run ESLint can either run something that local package has given me, or go run ESLint, right? It's the same problem.
But I think that's the desire. Like
Okay.
that's the feature.
Really?
that I can tell people run something like run yarn ESLint, and then if I can override that with a script in my package, but I don't have to.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's basically like effectively making your scripts like inherit from your node module /.bin folder.
Yes.
Which is a pretty major shift, and I think so. Gar, I feel like you are touching on something that is a really unfortunate ambiguity with npm exec as it currently stands, which is there's three things it could be doing. It'll first try your local node module /.bin, then it will try your globally installed node modules bins, and then it will fetch the package from the registry and put it in a temp location and run that. And that's weird. It would be nice, I think, to have a command which is just like, I just run the local one only, and if it's not there, then fail. We do have a way in, at least there is a way in npm exec that if it's not installed globally or locally, then it will prompt you. So we kind of close that loophole a bit, but yeah, if it can be either local or global and there's no command to say only run the local one, then that's sort of unfortunate, and that's the state we're in now.
So I just want to be mindful of time to eat another maybe 5 minutes. I think this is important because this is obviously, it keeps this comes up a lot, and so I want to make sure that like we're doing something here. So cool. So Wes, feel free to chime in.
Sure. So actually, Pele, I don't know if you want to talk about what you were saying in the chat, because it's related to what I was going to say. Not to put you on the spot, but I
Sure.
think. Oh, go ahead. Yep.
Well, so I think that since every package can publish a binary of any name, and I mean, if I'm used to go in and run a script of a certain name in my projects, and then suddenly I'm in a project and I'm like trying out and thinking, okay, this is gonna work, like run even if running npm tests, like npm run test, and all of a sudden one of my modules has one of my dependencies has published a test binary, then will that be run? I mean, that's it could be a way to actually get people to run code that they wouldn't want to run, because you can insert if you get a hold of a popular package that many people depend on, then you could insert a command there. And there's also stuff like in typical GitHub Actions commands, you can have something like npm run build if present. And I mean, depending on how you do it, it feels that it could result in similar concerns as you voiced for top level commands. Like an npm build would be a Semver major because it could conflict with an existing command. That, yeah, I'm just concerned. It doesn't feel right in my stomach, really.
I think
that was
challenge. No, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Jordan. It's all right.
I was just going to say that the challenge there is that without this capability, what people will do is run npx, which or they'll run I guess without this capability and only using npm, they'll do npm run if they're intending to do a script, and they'll do npx if they're intending to do a binary. But that doesn't allow, that means you have to have a different command for both use cases. And then npx also means that if they have, they could have something globally installed that they're expecting to run, and then a local thing hijacks that, right? If you have create Angular or create React app or Ember CLI or something globally installed, as many people do, or Yeoman, and then you have a local dependency that just declares that as a binary, npx will already hijack it, and that's already what people are doing. And if people didn't have npx, then what they used to be doing is put node modules/.bin in their path, which is much worse. And so there's all of these are the vulnerability you're talking about, I think, is always going to be there, because what people want to do is be vulnerable to that for convenience. And so by the more things we can provide that are less dangerous, I think the safer everyone is overall. But I don't think there's any way to avoid that entirely.
So,
I think that's a great point. And we should probably go to Tierney, but I just wanted to mention that is specifically the RCE vector I was referencing when I said that's an RCE, is somebody just randomly in a popular transitive adding a common build target and then using that as their malicious entry point. And to Jordan's point, yes, there is already these problems, but adding new interfaces on top of these problems is not necessarily the right solution. If we're concerned about that problem in a real sense, we should probably revisit a bit some of the conversations about how those bin scripts are registered today, and solve some of those problems as well in whatever new feature we introduce, so we both improve the security and the usability at the same time. Because I think we can achieve that. Yeah.
Tierney and then Orda.
Just the one thing I wanted to say there is in the case of it being potentially exploited by a popular module that's hijacked, I think there's other problems, and that is one path, but I don't think that providing paths for abuse of a hijacked module is should be excluding features, because if a popular module is hijacked, there's plenty of other problems already there, and that's just an avenue that could be used.
Or did you want to wrap things up a bit? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. One of the ways that Jan has sort of solved some of these kinds of problems is by not allowing transitive dependencies to be able to actually run commands when they're in the global namespace. It's called Jan strict mode. And that has caused me to update a lot of package JSONs in the past, which is useful in that context. I think everybody is generally on the same page. In terms of updating my RFC, I might just hold off until either someone on the NPM side either has a say in what you all think is the right direction. To some extent, I think the ball is in your court, and I will be here to answer questions, close my RFC if needed, and figure out what we want.
Appreciate that. Feel free to update the notes I took. Apologize, they were sporadic. If folks feel like they aren't accurate, definitely add context that I've lost if so. And again, thank you so much, Orda, for bringing this up. There's other cool ideas that I know you're pushing for as well, especially in the TypeScript space. So install with types. Interesting. Cool. So moving on then quickly, because I know we spent a lot of time on that, but I thought it was useful. Roy, I'm not sure if you've got a little monster you're having to deal with right now, or if you want to give a quick update on workspaces.
I can give a quick update. Yeah. So yeah, just maybe a little bit of an update. Yeah, I guess from what we've been discussing last week. So basically, we had a little bit of back and forth within the team here, and we're kind of tending to go back to the place we were in the beginning. I know when we started exploring the implementation, we started leaning more towards having a workspace top level command within the CLI. But now we're kind of back into the config approach, basically. So either you use a command line argument or a config for either filtering for a specific workspace or a set of nested workspaces, or all of your workspaces with like a generic -- workspaces option. So yeah, I started just fleshing out this document based on the work we firstly did in the RFC to identify and categorize the different types of commands the client needs to support. So the rationale being that we had already identified basically as a category, on one of the categories, like all the install commands, right? And basically in that context, like we figured out, well, it's basically the same thing as having workspaces option as true, right? Like install is currently already aware of workspaces, right? Like it links them into place and all of the other related install commands. So we could kind of get around like the complications of that by just saying that the other categories, like they basically have workspaces as false by default. So that your other commands like still behave as expected today. So any other commands like here are the reading from the dependency tree, but up here we have the standard category, which behaves similar to just sitting into a workspace folder and executing that command there. So yeah, this one would be more likely to break if we were to just assume workspace is true by default. So basically the difference being today, if you just run, let's say npm docs, very simplistic command here in the top level, it would output result for the docs reference of the top level package JSON. But if you mean to run across all the workspaces, then it would do the same as cding into each one of the folders and updating the outputting the result for each of the workspaces there. So assuming workspace is true for all the commands is not really a solution, right? It's problematic. So a way to get around it is having workspaces being false by default in all the other commands, and basically only in the install family of commands have it being true by default. So I'm starting to put together a bunch of examples here just to kind of make sure we do the exercise of thinking through each one of the commands, how they behave. Like diff is another example that it will look up the current folder package JSON to try and compare the current folder against the package published by the same name. So here is an example of running it in the top level. Then I'm just have a fork of a brev here that I'm doing a little bit of tweaking so I can see the diff for that. And then like comparing across, like, okay, if I'm running multiple workspaces, and then I basically have forks of some of our other packages, just to draw some illustration of how each of the commands would work. So I'm gonna try and finish the list of examples here a little bit more, at least get a little bit more diversity in all the possible commands we have across all the categories we identified. But here I also have like npm test. Okay, this here will just run for the top level as you would expect today. But if you try to filter by a specific workspace name, then it's running the task for that specific workspace. If you try and run, yeah, here I missed the command from the example, but if you try and run for all the workspaces, then you'll get the output for all the workspaces in the context of the task command. So yeah, that's pretty much where I stopped and wanted to provide the update and just hear if there's feedback.
Appreciate you sharing that. We'll probably have some demos by next week for sure. Yeah, I think what should be highlighted here in what you said was just as we fleshed out the categories, I think that this became we just became aware that like this was the right design and was kind of where we started. And then I know that we scoped things to a workspace command, and then we're going back a little bit, at least with the design of this. But I think, yeah, the categorization and basically saying what each command is going to do was what highlighted this change. So I'm not sure if anybody else has any comments, but
maybe Isaac.
Yeah, I know we were going back and forth on the top level command versus a flag to kind of opt into workspace awareness, and then this where we ended up landing was no top level command, no flag. Just if there's workspaces, we do workspace things because it's probably what you want, and it's what we're doing anyway for a bunch of commands. So with that in mind, we do have to figure out kind of what it means to use the -w flag as a filter. So if I want to install only in one workspace and not reify my entire tree, like there's some kind of arborist work that needs to be cleaned up there, which could also actually help us avoid repeating some of the bugs that we've had in the global space, where we do a similar sort of filtered install so that we don't have to install every single thing when you install one global package. The other challenges, the other challenging ones are exec and run script, because I wouldn't want to run npm exec ESLint and have it just run ESLint 50 times because I have 50 workspaces. I would want to just run it once in the top level, unless I specifically said run it in these 3 workspaces. Similar with npm test or any other run script. So those ones probably do need a little bit more careful thought. For the ones that look in the package JSON, like Roy pretty much covered, like if you give it a workspace argument, then it will use that package JSON instead. It'll be effectively the same as npm docs -- prefix equals packages / foo. So yeah, it's I like where this is landing. It feels like a satisfying resolution. And then also we keep the top level workspace command if we ever do want to say, well, here's a special command for initializing a new workspace, or for adding a workspace or removing one or renaming it or what have you.
Wes, you have feedback?
It was only just that one specific comment about like ESLint not wanting to run it once. That's actually not always true. So making sure that we accommodate both use cases is probably pretty important. I think there is a solution in my mind, whereas it would be if you run that and the top level package JSON does have a lint, ESLint script, then it would run that instead of CDing into every directory in that by default. Again, obviously we should have flags that to make it do one or the other explicitly and yada yada, all that stuff. But by default, I think it'd be pretty straightforward to just say like, what would we expect a user to think would happen, and maybe we need to vet that with some users. But anyway.
Yeah, I think the safer, at least the way I see it now, drawing the examples, I think the safer route is just to say workspaces are it's just false by default, right? For all the other commands, except for the install commands, which already is all the family of install commands, CI, what have you, like they are already taking workspaces into consideration today. So they're the equivalent of having workspaces true. All the other commands, on the other hand, like it's the equivalent of having workspaces false. So that's how I'm trying to get around that today, because otherwise, yeah, it would be totally like a breaking change for users.
I think it's worth coming up with a sort of like elegant and terse way of expressing this in our documentation and how we talk about it, just to say, so that they have an easier way of kind of holding in their memory like what they should be expecting when a given command runs. Also, I think
this was my labeling idea.
There's also the ls command, I think, needs a little bit of workspace awareness, because right now it just shows your top level packages by default. And so it shows each of these workspaces as links, but it doesn't show their dependencies. And I think like it should be showing the dependencies of my projects, which is the dependencies of my root and the dependencies of my workspaces. And similar for like outdated, right? It's another one where when we read the package tree, we should be treating, we usually have some kind of special handling for the root project because that's your project. We should have a similar handling for any workspaces because those are also your projects.
Yeah, but maybe just with the intent of being safer-ish for NPM 7, maybe they just still behave the same, and eventually we make them workspaces aware by default in NPM 8. I don't know I don't know if it's considered a breaking change. I know some folks are more interested in
what
the LS.
What are you suggesting there is specifically with LS? Right?
So yeah, like from the example Isaac just gave, like, because essentially workspaces, it means it's your code too, right? So you care about their dependencies. So Isaac is just basically proposing, okay, npm ls should already print the dependencies and the dev dependencies for workspaces too, right? Which I think makes total sense, right? Like in a world where we are handling workspaces for you, by default, npm ls should do that. What I'm suggesting is that maybe for npm 7 to make the transition period, maybe they don't. Maybe we just stick with the current output and we make it an opt-in for npm ls, let's say.
I think
and then it becomes the default in npm 8.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the best idea. I mean, it's kind of marked as experimental anyway. And that would make it more useful. I think everybody's sort of expecting workspaces to change in some dramatic ways along the V7 timeframe. So as long as we're not like the case for it being a opt-in or a semver major, I think would be, well, here's this reasonable use case that somebody has where they're using npm ls, and if we start printing those additional lines, it will break them. I'm not sure that exists for ls for this kind of change that I'm proposing, or for outdated. It's just we're going to start showing them a little bit more data.
Probably audit too.
I think, well, audit already goes all the way.
Right.
Bit in the weeds here, but Wes, I think you also have a comment, and let's maybe
move on after that or something.
Yeah.
My only comment was while you might see it as experimental, and while it might be, I don't imagine most users are going to see it the same way. And as soon as they start using it and they're like, oh, great, finally, I can switch, and then we break them, not going to be a great experience. So I would rather personally see you land the ones we know are going to work pretty well and just punt on the feature, or like put it somehow, bury it to test it out, but like don't commit something that's experimental and then expect that you can break it, in that. So if there's question on certain things, like landing a partial feature here, to me is perfectly reasonable.
Again, I try to take notes.
We will be married to whatever we ship, though. I think you're right.
Right. Okay. I want to quickly move on because we have a bunch of other items here. Moving to, and feel free to add comments and feedback to the updated RFC that Roy's still working on. If you have any other sentiments, for sure. And it sounds like the action item there initially, Roy, was also that you're going to continue to update that over the next week with other examples, other specific examples for each command. So item number 4, the RFC 325, run pre-post install scripts on a single package installation. I think we've this has come up a couple times. Not sure where we've landed with this, or if there's a separate RFC to be made. I believe Jordan and Isaac, you were the most vocal last week when we brought this up.
Yeah, I think we need a node modules has been mutated script hook lifecycle event.
Inside Arborist itself?
Regardless of where it's implemented, like the user should be able to put a mutation, a scripts.mutation
right.
It gets run before and after, with a pre and post, whenever we're making any kind of change to the package tree. That would solve this without conflating what the install and post install scripts are used for.
Gar?
Yeah, there's a bit of an ambiguity here, right? Install means I have installed my packages. We don't have something that says I have been installed. That's the fundamental thing they want, right? So it isn't even, as a developer thinking about it, I'm not thinking about it as my node module's been mutated. I'm thinking about it, I need this to run when I have been installed versus I need this to run when I am installing packages. And I think that's for the developer experience, that's the way we need to make this look and the way we need to think about it. Well, they want, I need this to run when I install one new dep, right? Let me look.
Yeah, so we run the pre and post install scripts when you run npm install with no arguments, because that's sort of like, I need to get to the state where I have been installed is what this looks like. It is an ambiguity. It was not an ambiguity initially in npm, and when we started doing local installs, it became one. But what they actually want is, I have installed a dep, or I've updated a dep, or I've removed a dep, and have that run your pre and post install scripts, which just takes the existing ambiguity and makes it worse. So I think the answer here is, let's give them a new script which does the thing that they're asking for, and not reuse pre and post install on that.
So should we create a new RFC or ask?
Yeah, I'll just
backlog that.
I'll post an update for this.
Is this going to overlap a lot with the install script, right? Because when you run npm install, this is going to run.
Yes, it will, but it will also not run when you're installed as a dependency, and it will run anytime you basically anytime you call Arborist reify. So any add, remove, update, audit, fix, anything that makes any kind of change to the package tree will fire off this script.
Cool.
Mutation observers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Wes?
Yeah, one use case, now that you're saying this approach, that I'm wondering, do you think you could see it solving this as well, would be the, I have some internal APIs that I want to call before people install anything, again, not just a bare install, but another package, and then be able to inspect the tree. Do you think there's a way, and then make recommendations like, hey, I see you're trying to install this, but like, actually we have platform recommendations that say you should be adding the previous major version yet. Do you see exposing the hooks there, or like anything that we would be able to safely modify on the user's behalf, the request, right? Like if I know that when they say React at 17, well, this app doesn't use React at 17, and we're positive we don't want somebody to accidentally install that, automatically switch it to 16 or something, right? Like
I would really rather not. I mean, for that specifically, what I would rather do is, hey, if you print an error message and you exit with a status of 1, then that's what is in your power to do.
Okay, that's an abort. Okay, which is probably reasonable.
Yeah.
I'm just, was thinking outside the box when you mentioned the pre script.
So the what we could do, one of the things that came up last time we talked about this was like, it's kind of challenging to get the list of changes in any kind of reasonable way, but I think there may be a way to do it. I would like to kind of create a new RFC and bike shed a little bit on that, because you want to be able to run this script prior to the tree being mutated and have some idea of what mutations are being made. So, because otherwise you can't do exactly what you're saying, right? You don't know that React 17 is being installed until you have installed it. You could run a post mutate script that crashes in that case, and then we have to roll back the entire install. It's a lot more efficient to just crash pre-mutation, right? And then post mutate scripts could just be the case where like, oh, I need to update my git ignore to ignore this path, or this should be a bundled depth, so let me like make sure it's there or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. What I'd really love to be able to do is say like, hey, Arborist, here's a file. When I tell you to include it, and then pass me the Arborist tree, and then I can do whatever I want to it, and then pass it back, and then it would execute, on with the rest of the reify.
That makes every security klaxon in my brain go off, because
great point. But
now I can put one file on your machine that hijacks every install. I guess I could do that anyway if I could put files on your machine, but that is kind of some spooky action at a distance.
Yeah, so this is a totally different topic, so maybe we table and discuss offline.
Just to be mindful of time, we have about 5 minutes left. Guy, I want to give you a couple minutes to just maybe give a quick update, if there is any. I don't think there is. Yeah, I know the next 2 RFCs, I think was a takeaway the last time we talked about them for us to go essentially backlog the work of adding the capability for the CLI. I'm not sure if we actually have backlog tickets yet though, so we can discuss that offline, backlogging tickets to actually add this support, because I think what we said was we're decoupled here from the actual registry implementation. If we pass multiple tags and the CLI supports passing along multiple tags, at least in the case of PR and RFC 319, that other registries could go and implement this if they wanted to. Is that accurate summary of what we sort of talked about last time, at least for 319? That we could go do this work and we're decoupled from the registry actually supporting it.
The no tag thing, I think are still on the how to declare it. The multiple disk tags for a publish, I think works maybe out of the box. And for updating, there's none of the registries support that. It would basically have to be a CLI just batches those requests, right? And there's no rollback.
I think that's really nice if we actually added that in terms of developer experience, but because we
I don't remember where we
time.
landed on the CLI flags on that though.
Yeah. Okay.
For anything that's going to be batching up multiple requests to the registry, that should basically be a blocker for us. Like it needs to be a single atomic put to the registry. Otherwise we run into really gnarly race conditions.
Okay. Thinking of npm publish workspace, but anyways.
Well, that's not batching up. That's not batching up multiple writes to the same package.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay.
Yeah, but that's a good point. We should talk about that topic too.
Yeah, a
With 3 minutes left.
Multi-publish for multiple packages would be really, really nice. especially if it was also a single atomic right.
Yeah, I mean, think about you publish a bunch of things that depend on each other, and like what
Batch
fails,
publish,
and now you've got a bunch of latest tags that don't actually work because their corollary is not published. Important.
Yeah. Okay. With about 3 minutes left, Isaac, did you want to give a quick update to the registry protocol? Can we land this? Can we, or was there any work that was left to be done here?
So I did make another pass at this and kind of combed through. I improved some of the examples and justifications based on the feedback from Mael and
Zoltan.
The big functional thing that I added, which I think is kind of essential, is if you have a dependency that is a registry specifier, and it has dependencies that are just dist tags or versions or ranges, those also basically have to be resolved against the same registry you pulled that thing out of. Because otherwise you can very easily run into naming conflicts, which is the same problem that we have right now with installing private packages from tarballs. And it opens the door for more name jacking type of security problems. So yeah, so that's in there now. Zoltan's pushback on it was that he really wanted to see kind of what he wants to see is a way to define either in config or package JSON a short name which desugars to a particular registry. So you could depend on internal : foo at 1.x, and then somewhere else you say internal is a specifier for the registry HTTPS : blah 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 blah.
Alias, like registry defined aliases. Registries defined as aliases. Yes. Sorry.
So the challenge there from an implementation point of view is that right now the npm package arg specifier set is sort of it's a small and discrete set which never changes, and we assume that that's the case all throughout the system. If we start being able to kind of dynamically or configurably add new ones, that gets us into a really interesting and tricky bit of issues, especially if it can be set in the package.json file, because now it can actually dynamically change what those things point to as we're resolving the package tree. So there's a lot of subtlety and foot guns in that, but honestly, I think this particular RFC is it solves the original problem that we were trying to solve with it. It's straightforward to implement. Yeah, I think that we should ratify it.
So we're at time right now. And the fact that there was some within the last couple of days, there was a couple of comments. I think maybe we keep it open for one more week. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I'm not going to get to it this week anyway. So
yeah, we're not gonna implement it tomorrow. So yeah,
there's nothing stopping us from implementing it tomorrow if we do want to. We've done that before.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So appreciate the folks, everybody that jumped on today. Apologize, we still left a few things on the table that I know that we're trying to get to. So I'll try to reprioritize those for next week. But yeah, thank you all for jumping on today, and hopefully see you next week, same time, same place. Cheers.
Cheers.